Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Matt Gets It. I'm your host, Matt Martinez. This is a sports debate talk show discussing all the top headlines from around the sports world. Today, with me on the call is my great friend again, Dom Archuleta, former football player here at Adams State University. And in the booth with us today, we have a very special guest. We got former Adams State catcher and current varsity assistant, Billy the Thrill Ryan. Thank you, Billy, for being here. It's a great pleasure having you, man.
Thank you, man.
So, with you being here, I think it's important for us to really just dive into our first discussion, and that has to do with the MLB. So, as everyone knows, or for those of you who do not know, the Houston Astros are a very top organization in baseball. I mean, they have really great play all around the field. At one point, their manager was looked at as one of the greatest managers in the game today. And unfortunately, they were involved in a cheating scandal that took place in 2017 and possibly extended into 2018 and 2019. And it was through a former player of theirs that really announced it and made it public, because everyone thought that something suspicious was going on in Houston. And it was a former player, Mike Fiers, that came out and said, we cheated in 2017. We used cameras in the outfield that had a direct signal to a computer in their dugout, and they knew what pitches were coming, you know what I mean, which is unfair in the game of baseball. And so, Billy, what do you think about what they did in 2017?
And honestly, just from having a little bit of a baseball past, a little bit of perspective, honestly, it breaks my heart. I hate to see it. You just said there's no room for it in the game today, and I don't believe in it, and I think that's, yeah. I don't really have to say much too else about it, because
it's disappointing because, Dom, I mean, they ended up winning the World Series in 2017. You know what I mean? Kershaw had that thing where he had trouble in the postseason, and then he faced the Astros in 2017, and it reflected that. It really hurt Kershaw's legacy, because we were he can't pitch in the big games, and it turns out that the Astros were cheating. What do you think, Dom?
Yeah, I gotta agree with Billy. It's pretty heartbreaking to see. They really took a lot of accolades away from other teams, other players. Kershaw's legacy could be on the line. Judge got an MVP strip from him by Altuve. I don't know, just like what all the players said, it's bogus. The apologies that they came out with were bogus. Their point of view was bogus. Everything about it was pretty heartbreaking, pretty bad, and it just is not a good look for baseball. And I think the punishment obviously should have been harsher.
And we'll get into that, but as of right now, I mean, there still really hasn't been a public apology. At least I felt there hasn't been or at least a strong enough attempt. Wouldn't you say, Billy?
Nothing sincere, at least. Nothing sincere. And everything they just try to scoot it aside, and they're saying, it didn't affect the game, and then he tries to deny it after he says it, their GM does. And it's just, how are you going to say that when it genuinely affects the game, obviously?
Well, yeah, I mean, you were a former Division II catcher. I mean, you know what the stakes it takes at calling a pitch, a certain pitch. A certain pitch could really affect the outcome of a game, and then if the hitter knows that that pitch is coming, I mean, it's obviously at a disadvantage.
Oh, definitely. And if you're sitting dead red and you know a curveball's coming and it's already starting low, your eyes are going to see it low. It's going to go down. It's going to be a ball. And it showed that world or that series run that the Dodgers were having with Kershaw, where he was I think his stat was he threw 51 curveballs.
He threw 51 breaking balls and not a single swing and miss on the Astros.
And if you look at the rest of the season, he was completely dominant in the regular season. He even had the two great starts before that. And he was really showing out to be the Cy Young winner and maybe even possible MVP that season.
It's just hard to believe that you're able to lay off that many breaking balls from Clayton Kershaw, because he has one of the nastiest curveballs in the entire MLB. And for them to specifically hang, not to swing at some of those pitches. I mean, if we look back at some of the replays, some of those pitches are plain nasty, and not even... the batter's not even lifting his bat off the shoulder, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So the Astros were ultimately punished by Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball. with that being said, the Houston Astros did have to forfeit both their first and second round draft picks for the next 2 years, along with facing a $5 million fine, and both their GM and manager were ultimately suspended for a year and fired. But do you think that punishment was harsh enough for them?
Not by any means. Absolutely not. I think, honestly, in my opinion, this should be a way harsher penalty. I think they should get their World Series removed, maybe even give back the rings potentially, and just have maybe just an asterisk in the book forever.
Be formerly known as the Houston Asterisks?
This is the Houston asterisk.
But, so, you mentioned that they should maybe give back the World Series title. I mean, their former pitcher in Ken Giles, who is now a part of, I believe, the Blue Jays, he came out and said that he would be fine with giving back the World Series ring. Don, do you think that's the action that needs to be taken?
I don't know about giving back their World Series rings, but at least put an asterisk by the World Series championship and noting that they didn't truly win it fair and square, that they had to cheat to win it. And it just kind of sucks because it was player-driven. So I think that they should have had harsher punishments, the players that are still on the Astros that were involved. And it just sucks to see because technology in baseball is a big thing for hitters to use, for pitchers to use to get better. And MLB's talked about taking it away because of this scandal, and it sucks to see for the teams who don't cheat all other teams besides the Astros because they love using the technology. I know hitters and pitchers use it just to get better and see the pitch sequence and where the pitches were.
The frustrating thing is that the Astros were already so good as a team. Like they got the talent. They got a lot of talent. I mean, whether it's pitching, if it's in the bullpen, if it's a position player. I mean,
All of them solid.
you got Altuve, who was the MVP in 2017, who is just a phenomenal contact hitter, hits for over 300. That means, like, why do you have to cheat if you're already that great of a hitter? You know, Alex Bregman is an up-and-coming star, and a lot of people labeled him as the new face of the MLB, or potentially could be, and I just find that hard to really stick by any of those players, considering that they cheated to win a championship. So
yeah, I feel like every other player in the MLB, they just lost respect for all the players, everybody involved, and that's pretty much what happened to me. I lost respect for the Astros. I used to be a big Altuve fan. Used to be a big Astros fan. Used to be about what they were about. Used to love watching them. Used to be about like their ways. And
it seemed like they were having fun, but
Right.
that was in hindsight. You know what I mean? Now you look back out of
they
it.
were doing things
They were
the
having
right way.
fun because they knew they were cheating
knew
and
what
getting
was
away with
happening,
it.
yeah.
Like, so, Billy, do you think that the remaining players who were from that 2017 roster that are still currently with them, do you think they should be suspended?
I don't know about like a full-on suspension. I would say make them maybe World Series ineligible for maybe a year. I feel like that is like, a fair punishment along with, the first round draft pick and the firing of like Aaron Hicks or the general manager and stuff like that. And I thought I just think it's important that like we show that this is just like a serious thing because they're just trying to brush it off like it's nothing. And like it's terrible.
It's a very serious thing, and that's why it's puzzling to me because like you have a lot of players throughout MLB history who have used PEDs and they've been suspended. You know what I mean? Like some players faced like a whole entire year suspension, right? I believe A-Rod had like an entire season
Yeah, I
he
think
couldn't
it was-
play,
Yeah, it was a lot.
and like everyone deems PEDs as cheating, but then when we come and look at the Astros, like this is plain
a whole team
outright
It's a whole
cheating.
team.
Like there's fine lines between, like sportsmanship and gamesmanship. Like this eliminated all aspects of those. Like yeah, like so. I mean, it's a really unfortunate situation that the MLB is going through right now because Major League Baseball, I mean, is one of the best sports in all of North America. I mean, it's really popular. I mean, it's growing worldwide. You see that now. A lot of players from overseas, and especially like the Dominican Republic and those areas, like they're great players coming. And then like, if the game is tainted in any way, like are people still gonna gravitate and wanting to play it? You know what I mean? Or does that mean that, hey man, they cheated, why can't we cheat? You know what I mean? So do you think possibly, Billy, that we might see more cheating in the future because of the Astros?
It depends. Like I feel like I said, the punishment I felt like should have been more severe, but obviously it's not going to change from what it is.
Yeah.
And I hope I don't see it progressing any further. Just because now I feel like people are going to be aware. I think they're going to take certain measures in the MLB. Maybe having like a certified MLB guy in the dugout. Maybe
just be more aware.
Just being more conscientious about just like the whole team, not just the players on the field.
Because like you see that Rob Manfred in particular, he fined the Astros organization $5 million to a giant business entity like the Astros organization. Is $5 million really gonna do anything? Like
It's nothing.
It's not even a quarter of anyone's like big name salary. On
exactly.
That team.
So I think that the punishment needed to be harsher. I agree that at least a postseason ban should have been implemented for the Astros, and I think that, I mean, they got the rings and the trophy already. You know, like I guess you can't necessarily give them back, but I think that there should be at least an asterisk in the record book that this World Series didn't really count like other ones. I mean, it's a similar thing to way back when with the Chicago White Sox. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
About them betting, they have their World Series asterisk. You know what I mean? I think that needs to be done for the Astros as well. Sticking with the MLB, we got a lot of big name players who have currently hit the IL or are potentially be heading towards the IL. I mean, we got Max Scherzer of the defending World Series champion, their ace. Max Scherzer, he's out with what is labeled as right side discomfort, you know. And dating back to the World Series, Billy, Scherzer missed the start because of some discomfort on his right side, particularly in his neck. Do you think this is a lingering injury? Do you think it's a new injury?
To me, it might be something that could be day to day. You never know. But, I mean, like, he did come back, and I think it was, like, the next day and came in and threw, I think, like, at least 7 innings or something like that.
Yeah, dating back to the World Series, yes.
Yeah.
He got pushed back a start because he felt discomfort. Came in for Game 6, right?
I think it was Game 6.
Game 6, and completely shut down the Astros.
Yeah, he did. He came in and shoved. So, who knows? It could be just a day-to-day thing. Maybe, just tweaked it or just slept on it wrong or something.
Do you think he's going to be ready for opening day?
I see some signs of him just, going out there and shoving on open day. I don't have any questions about him not starting.
And Dom, so with Scherzer potentially not being ready for opening day, do you think the Nationals, my apologies, do you think they slowly ease him back? Because I mean, they still have Steven Strasburg who's realistically an ace on any other team, but he's the number 2 guy because they have Max Scherzer. I mean, Steven Strasburg was the World Series MVP this year. I mean, went 6-0 in the postseason, lights out fastball, nasty breaking ball. Like, do you think they say, Strasburg, go ahead, you start opening day, and then we'll let Scherzer come back when he's healthy?
Yeah, if I'm the Nationals, why not? If we have Scherzer and Strasburg on the team, why not take it easy on Scherzer coming back from the injury? I think they will, personally. I don't think they'll rush him. I think they're going to take it easy. There's 162 games, so what's missing the first 2 starts going to do?
Yeah.
It's not going to be too much for him. He's a veteran. He's an ace. He's been through the reins. He just won the World Series. Why not give him a little extra time? So if I were the Nationals, sorry about that. If I were the Nationals, and I think they're going to do this, I would rest him probably the first couple starts, first 2 weeks of the season, just to make sure he's fully healthy, fully ready for the season, because he's vital for them.
Especially they need him to fully healthy for the postseason if they get there, because, I mean, obviously they want to defend their title, you know what I mean? And in order to do so, you got to have pitching that goes deep into in the late innings, especially in the postseason.
It's huge.
Definitely, especially now that the NL East is definitely getting tougher. You got the Braves probably going to be closer to the top. Mets might find their way near the middle of the pack, but, they still got young talent. The NL East is like a tough
Phillies are going to be a great team in the NL East. I mean, they made a lot of moves this year in free agency. They picked up Didi Gregorius
Yeah,
from the
that's a
Yankees.
big pickup.
They re-signed McCutchen.
Yeah.
Phillies are going to be a team to watch out for in the NL East. I agree with you.
They
Billy.
got Zach Wheeler.
Zach
Yeah.
Wheeler from the Mets. Yeah, that was a big.
He's supposed to be good.
Mhm.
So we'll see. It's gonna be interesting.
It's going to be
season,
interesting for sure. But Max Scherzer is not the only one that has found himself on the injury list. Recently, we had Justin Verlander, ace pitcher for the Astros. He went down with some discomfort in his right elbow. And Billy, do you think that one might be opening day threatening?
Yeah, definitely. You know, anything that's anywhere near the elbow or something like that, or even like a lat string like that, could set a guy back for at least like a few weeks. So, like the Astros, you know, like he's the obvious number one now that Garrett Cole's gone, and I think it's like vital to keep him healthy for the Astros. But you know, if he's not, I don't see him starting an opening day.
I agree. And then just with, well, you got to look at Verlander. I mean, he's one of the older pitchers in the MLB. I mean, he's a multiple time Cy Young, World Series champ, which is, you know, if that still holds any value, like we just discussed. But I mean, he has that on his resume. I mean, he's one of the better pitchers of the generation for sure, and he wants to keep his pitching as long as he can. So I think it would make sense for him to, you know, make sure his elbow, because that's essentially the most important thing for a pitcher is your elbow. You got to take care of your elbow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just saw what happened with Luis Severino, so it's kind of scary. Anything near the elbow with the pitcher's scary.
Mhm.
Astros should hold him out,
And
just like the Nationals would with Scherzer.
Luis Severino was going to be one of the aces for the Yankees this year, and it just seems like the Yankees can't catch a break the last 2 years with all the injuries they've been facing.
That's a team that's just injury riddled.
I mean, is the blame placed more so on the players? Is that because of their fitness instructors, their trainers? Like, what is it? Because Yankees have had nearly 30 people within the last 2 years, 30 different players on their roster be injured, and it's trolling over into this year. I mean, they're already losing James Paxton for the first about 6 weeks of the season. Giancarlo Stanton went down with the calf strain, and then Aaron Judge had a misdiagnosis for a fractured rib.
Yeah, you hate to see it. Honestly, it's a terrible thing. You know, did like a MLB, you know, MVP competitor every year, just coming out, and you know, hope to see him back in the game soon.
So, and both those guys, and Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, those are pretty big guys out there in the outfield. Both standing over 6'5", both tremendous power hitters. Which injury do you think is less serious, Dom, out of those two? Out of Aaron Judge's rib fracture and Giancarlo's calf strain?
See, that's a good question. See, I look at both these injuries as kind of mysteries because you don't know how long it's going to take for them to heal. You don't know when they're going to be ready. But I, honestly, if I had to pick which one I think is more serious, I would probably be more worried about Judge just because he's more of a staple to the team than Stanton is. He's probably a bigger bat in the lineup, not power-wise, but he can just do more.
Just more fearful.
Average, yeah. He can hit everywhere.
More
and
consistent.
yeah,
so.
definitely more consistent, and I'm just more worried about Judge. Stanton's kind of always injured, and a calf strain, he should be back in hopefully a month or so.
Yeah, so Judge said he realistically only needs about 20 to 30 at-bats in the spring to get ready for the season. I mean, which is, you have a couple simulation games, you know what I mean? You got some guys throwing live BP possibly.
Especially, yeah.
So we'll see what happens with the MLB. Crazy stuff coming up. I mean, we're only a few weeks away from opening day, which is very exciting. Can't wait. And so closing with the MLB, Billy, who's your World Series champ? What's your early prediction?
I think I have the Braves could be one of the front runners from the NL, but you can't put out the Dodgers either. The Dodgers are a solid squad altogether. They just pick up Mookie Betts this offseason, which is another, you know, top 5 outfielder, which they already have Cody Bellinger.
You say top 5 outfielder. Mookie Betts might be a top 5 player in all of baseball. I mean, we could debate it. Obviously, it's Mike Trout, the best player in MLB. If you disagree with that, I'm down to have some words with you over that, because there's just no disagreeing with the greatness of Mike Trout. So So you have potentially the Braves or the Dodgers coming out the NL.
Yep.
And then who do you have them facing?
Your AL, you can't put the Yankees out of contention. I hate to say it. But, just the AL's tough. You never know. The A's could have a good year or come out this year. And, it's all about that playoff baseball. It's all about what happens in October.
Okay. And so, Dom, who do you have as your World Series prediction?
I think there's two clear-cut in the NL and the AL, and it's obviously the Yankees-Dodgers. They got the most talent. They got the most superstars, firepower, money. And so I think that ultimately will be the World Series matchup. But some AL teams to look out for: the White Sox. They made some moves.
Loaded up. They made some moves.
Yep.
I think another
the
team,
Angels maybe too.
Angels definitely made some moves. I think a team in the NL that everyone is underestimating the amount of moves they made. I mean, they are in the Central, which is a tough division, but I think the Reds might surprise a lot of people this year. I mean, they added a lot of people. They got a fantastic third baseman in Suarez. They got they just got Trevor Bauer, who's an ace that used to play for the Cleveland Indians. So they got Joey Votto.
The classic Joey Votto.
You can't leave out Joey Votto, who's one of the top
hitters in baseball.
Top hitters in baseball, regardless of age. Like, dude's just consistent year after year. So I think I'm going to agree with you, Dom. I got the Dodgers and Yankees as well for my World Series prediction, and I'm going to go with the Yankees. I think that the Yankees the last 2 years have been the Dodgers have been right there as well.
Yeah, of course.
But, I mean, it just a whole decade for New York without a World Series, like, they got to start this new decade off strong, and I think they're going to do so.
That's a good pick.
So we'll be right back. Thank you once again for tuning into this week's episode. This is the Matt Gets It Sports Talk Show. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Matt Gets It Sports Talk Show. I'm your host, Matt Martinez. For those of you just tuning in, I have two very special guests with me today. I got Dom Archuleta with me in the booth again, and we got Billy Ryan, the assistant varsity coach for the baseball team and former Adams State baseball alumni. Next up, we got some NFL headlines to discuss, starting with Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. So, as you know, Dallas Cowboys are what everyone in the country declares as America's team. Yeah. If you root for Dallas, good for you. But so their quarterback, Dak Prescott, is a talented young QB who is seeking a top-level contract from the Cowboys, who seem hesitant to give him what he's desiring. So last year in 2019, the Cowboys finished 8-8 and missed the playoffs, which was heartbreaking to the entire Cowboy fan base. And really, they were trying to figure out where the blame was. Was it on Dak? Was it on Jerry Jones, their owner? Is it on Jason Garrett, who was their former head coach, who they let go over the offseason? Billy, do you think Dak Prescott is worth the desired amount of money he's seeking, which is seemed to be close to $40 million?
Yeah, I mean, he just turned down that, $33 million contract not just too long ago. Yes,
he just turned down a $33 million contract per year. $100 million guaranteed, but yeah, it comes out to $33 million a year.
And it seems like he comes out and just loses to some of these average teams, but when you look at his stats, he was second in yards. He was only fourth in our 11th and oh gosh, I'm looking up these stats. I'm terrible, but he threw 30 touchdown passes last season.
Which was fourth best in the NFL. He finished second in yards with 4,902, nearly 5,000. I mean, he was only behind Jameis Winston in passing yards. The guy could throw the ball.
He flat out played, but just like I said, he might not just have that X factor, But it could have been the guidance that Jason Garrett had on him. But now that he's gone, who knows? But maybe he is that $40 million man contract. But personally, I don't see it.
You don't see it. And Dom, do you think the Cowboys are gonna end up franchise tagging Dak if they can't come to an agreement?
That's what it's looking like. Is they're gonna franchise tag him or Amari Cooper if they can't get deals done? Most likely Amari Cooper. In my eyes, I think they want to get a deal done with Dak, and I see why. He came in as a rookie, led him to an NFC championship, a first-round bye, playoffs. came in for Tony Romo, who the town loved, Jerry Jones loved, and he came in and he started winning. And the town loves the winners. Dallas, America's team. America loves when Dallas wins, I guess. And so I think he deserves the contract. I don't know about $40 million. I think he should have accepted the $33 million one because that is extraordinary.
It's a lot of money for sure per year. But I think what everyone fails to realize about Dak was he wasn't a first or second round pick. He came in as a fourth rounder and has exceeded everyone's expectations. No one's expecting a fourth round QB to come in and throw for nearly 5,000 yards, 30 touchdowns. His touchdown to interception ratio is almost a 3-to-1. His QBR, he finished top 5 in the league. But is it all on Dak, or is there someone else that needs to be held accountable?
Well, I think that, Jerry Jones does a good job of putting, the best guys out there. Like you see Ezekiel Elliott, they've had like a pretty good offensive line for like the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, they top 5 offensive line for sure.
And like I don't know if you can completely say it's on Dak because like you look at his stats, but you also got Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield who's also a top 5 rusher in the league.
Yes, Zeke finished in the top 5 for rushing. Dallas as a team was first in total yards per game, so they were moving the ball, but their record doesn't necessarily reflect them scoring a lot of points. Or there was a lot of games that the defense failed to show up in some instances in some aspect of the games, particularly in the fourth quarter when they needed to stop. But Dallas's offense is moving the ball, they're putting up a large amount of yards. Like, would it be wise for the Cowboys to move on from Dak despite the numbers that he just put up?
No. I think having a stable quarterback in the NFL these days, and especially that's something Jerry Jones wants. He always wants a stable quarterback. They had Romo before Dak. They had Aikman in the past. And that gap in between Romo and Aikman, they were just really bad. And Jerry Jones was kind of in a rust, and he was kind of panicking a little bit. And coming back to the point, they need a stable quarterback, and Dak, I think, fits pretty well in the Dallas system. We'll see with Mike McCarthy. And back to the blame point, I think they put it on Jason Garrett ultimately. So that's their scapegoat for this year. We'll see next year. But I think Dak deserves a contract, like I've said, and I think they need to stick with him as their quarterback because the continuity between him, Zeke, and if they can keep Amari Cooper, it's pretty special, and their offense is something special.
Yeah,
So.
if you have a top 5 rusher in the league, that's always a plus. When your line is in the top 5, that means your quarterback's being protected for the most part, and that's allowing him to be able to put up these type of numbers. Billy, do you think if Dak stays in Dallas, is he the best QB in that division? You got Dwayne Haskins with Washington. He was a rookie this year. He only got a couple of starts under his belt. You got Daniel Jones up in New York. He's taking over the reins for Eli Manning. Eli Manning retired after the season. And then in Philadelphia, you got Carson Wentz, who was playing very well up until he hurt his knee. He had a pretty good year last year. But do you think Dak is ultimately the best QB in that division?
Ultimately, yeah, I think so. It's just tough because especially Danny Dimes, he's a young kid. Same with Haskins. They need a little bit more time in the NFL to develop. But Dak came in as a rookie too in that playoff situation, and he made it shine. So sometimes I think it just comes down to whether or not he has that X factor, whether he wants to come out and win a ball game.
So would that be wise for Jerry Jones to keep Dak because he has that experience already over his fellow QBs on division rivals?
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't think anybody else. I think Dak Prescott is probably the number 1 quarterback though, but I do see him, maybe struggling a little bit early, but ultimately he came, especially during the season last season, he ultimately found a way, to get, squeeze those passes in there and score those touchdowns like the stats show it.
So we got a lot of QB free agents on the market. We got a few big names in particular. We got Tom Brady and we got Phillip Rivers, who are now free agents. Phillip Rivers obviously parted ways with the Chargers. They came to an agreement. He moved his entire family cross country and is now living in Florida. Billy, where do you think Phillip Rivers ends up playing next year?
rough. I don't see. I wish, personally, I would like to see Phillip Rivers retired. I think it's like maybe his time. He's getting a little bit old, but I don't really know where he could end up this year. Like what teams could. You never know. Like you could kind of depends where Tom Brady goes too, because you do want an experienced quarterback back there.
Do you think that a certain domino needs to fall before we figure out where Rivers is going to go?
I think so too.
Is Tom Brady that domino?
It could be. I feel like he could be that domino. Like he's one of those, like, his stats speak for himself. He was under some good coaching with Bill Belichick, and he understands the game well, and I feel like that could be the thing where he could turn a team around. Where I see Phillip Rivers, he throws a lot of picks. He was like one of those guys who's always near the bottom of the list for throwing picks, but, he's always at the top of the board for throwing yards.
Yeah, so with Phillip Rivers, he finished 4th in passing yards this year with throwing just over 4,600. But he finished 2nd to last in the league with 20 interceptions. So, I mean, he did throw a lot of interceptions this year, Dom. Do you think it was primarily because of age? Do you think it was just, like, inexperienced receivers? I mean, he did have some injuries at receiver and tight end throughout the year. It just seemed like San Diego just couldn't get its wheels going. But do you think Phillip Rivers' performance this year was primarily because of age, or do you think it was just one of those tough years?
I think it was a combination of his age and kind of falling off a little bit. And then his O-line was spotty. They had a lot of injuries, a lot of mixed O-line in there. So it wasn't really consistent for him up front. But his guys outside with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, he had Eckler and Gordon in the backfield. They had good weapons, so I see why his yards are good, but I don't really understand the picks too much. Besides the offensive line, he made some pretty bad decisions this year when I watched him.
Yeah, he made some bad throws this year. And, I mean, when they played the Raiders, he almost threw 4 interceptions in one game. But luckily for him, the Raiders are just so bad in penalties that 2 of those picks got overturned and the drive stayed alive, because else he would have had 4. He would have added 4 more picks to his 20, honestly.
Yeah.
So
I agree with Billy. I think he needs to retire.
He needs to retire. He needs to take the same approach as Eli Manning. Like, you know what? I had my run in this league. I've done some good things. It's just unfortunate that, he just never was able to win a Super Bowl or really get there. I mean,
yeah.
I could see him signing to a team, being that backup quarterback role, kind of being a mentor to, like, one of the younger stars in the league. But it all depends on what he wants to do, and I know ultimately he gets fired up when he plays, and he wants to be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
I don't see him being a backup in the league, so that's why I see him probably being, if he doesn't retire, the last domino to fall. The team that needs him, who didn't get anybody in the draft, who didn't get another free agent.
Didn't get one of those top free agents.
So somebody who just needs a veteran starter to play, and I think it's either that or he retires, so...
So, what does that mean for Tom Brady? I mean, if we look at Tom Brady's season compared to Rivers, I mean, the record is obviously the big difference here. Brady took the Patriots to 12-4 this year, while Rivers took the Chargers to 5-11. But if we look at those teams as a whole, there's a big difference in the player personnel.
So, yeah, within the organization.
So, the Patriots had the top defense in the NFL, which carried them in most of their games this year, like, if we're just being frank here. Brady threw a lot of yards, but, I mean, it's primarily because of that system in which he plays in. You got to get the ball out quick under Bill Belichick's system.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? I think it's just little out routes, by Edelman or running back. So, I mean, he gets the ball out quick. He did throw a lot of yards, but his QBR was, middle pack. And it's understandable. He is old. He's 42 years old. But I guess because Tom Brady is held to this high of a standard, that when he doesn't perform to that standard, we're just like, man, like, what's going on? Do you think it was age finally catching up to Tom Brady this year?
It could be, and then it could be like, I feel like they might have had a lack of weapons. Their running backs are kind of inconsistent with Burke and or Burkhead and
James White.
Well, yeah, James White, and it's kind of inconsistent. I wish they would have picked up like another big name.
They didn't have Gronk
receiver,
this year, so obviously that's
factor.
a big loss in his arsenal.
Yeah.
Antonio Brown, I mean, he messed over the Patriots and he messed over the Raiders, so tough situation there. I mean, you had Josh Gordon, who was on the Patriots but could not seem to just stay on the field consistently. There's always something going on with Josh Gordon. So I could see the argument that there was a lack of weapons there, but I think, 42 in the NFL is up there, especially for a contact sport. I mean, granted, he is a QB. His O-line does protect him fairly well, but I think just might be catching up to him.
True. I don't know about age being the main factor last year. I agree with Billy being weapons. I still think Tom's got it a little bit. Mm-hmm. He's in the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And all the ones before that. But he was a little younger then, obviously. But it was the weapons for me. He didn't have any consistent receivers, constant injuries. Edelman was even injured. And he was mostly thrown to his running backs, which kind of sucks for a quarterback. Just throwing these checkdowns to the back, these short little routes. And I think Tom, when he gets some weapons around him, if he stays in New England, they're going to have to get some weapons around him. But if he moves to another team with some weapons, I think he's going to show everybody this year that.
And do you ultimately see Brady staying in New England, or do you think he leaves the place he's called home for the last 2 decades?
See, I think it's going to be tough for him. I don't see him leaving New England in my eyes, because who would want to leave after almost 20 seasons? It's incredible. That's unheard of these days, staying with the team that long, and they have such a good relationship, him, Robert Kraft, even Belichick. So if they can just get him some weapons, I think that's the best place for him, obviously. So with the defense, it would be a complete team next year, and that'd be perfect for Tom. And I think he can win another Super Bowl or 2. So.
And Billy, so do you think he's staying in New England?
It seems like he's always kind of showing like he might leave, but I also have that feeling that he might stay. He's been there for, that 2 decades, and especially with this coach, Bill Belichick, do you ever get really tired of winning championships? Does that happen?
When you have single-handedly, when you equal the most Super Bowls in history by yourself, it'd be kind of hard to leave a situation in which you're constantly winning.
Very true. Winning consistently is hard to leave. It's in his blood. I know his TB12 facilities are right next to the Foxborough facilities or the training facilities with the Patriots. So it would be a tough get up and move for him. So I think staying there would be ideal.
I think, too, just because of the amount of success he's had in that particular division, he beats the Dolphins almost every year, twice a year. He beats beats the Jets twice a year,
True.
Buffalo finally showed something this last year and beat New England. Buffalo is on the up and coming. I think that division is going to be theirs once Brady or Belichick is done, being associated with the Patriots. But, it's going to be interesting to see what Tom Brady decides to do, because, it really is his decision. It's no one else's. He can only influence him so much. It really depends on how important the Patriots organization makes him feel going forward, at least, because it's understandable, it's understood everything he's done up until this point. Definitely. But can you hold on to the past for how long? You know what I mean? You got to be able to see the future and see what's coming up. You got to prepare for that. In the NFL, you only have so many opportunities to compete at a high level, and at the quarterback position, you need someone who's going to do that year in, year out. And so when you're fading, or your talent is, your abilities, I should say, not talent, your abilities are diminishing, you got to be able to make a decision as a front office, hey man, this is a business at the end of the day, we need to win. So it's going to be interesting to see where Tom Brady ends up. Phillip Rivers is another interesting name, if he retires or not. We got Jameis Winston, who is famous Jameis, who led the league in yards, touchdowns, and picks. That's just some combo there. But we're going to take a small break, and we'll be back to discuss some UFC. Hey everyone, this is the Matt Gets It Sports Talk Show. I'm your host, Matt Martinez. With me in the booth right now is Don Marchuleta, and we're going to... Next topic up for discussion is UFC 248, the results of UFC 248, which featured arguably the top 5 one of the top 5 greatest MMA fights of all time, regardless of gender, male or female. And that was, like we discussed, the co-main event that featured the champ, Zhang Weili of the strawweights, taking on the former champ, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. And Dom, I think this fight lived up to everyone's expectations and probably exceeded them, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, it definitely exceeded my expectations. Couldn't have gotten much better. It was one of the best fights I've ever seen, probably the best fight I've ever seen live. And I've never seen that many punches, that many strikes thrown in a match that have landed. And the competitors stay up, the fighters stay up, and it was just a crazy fight. Seeing Joanna's face at the end with the hematoma.
Oh man, one of the
gross.
nastiest cases of hematoma you'll ever see in an MMA fight. I mean, her head, was really misshaped, honestly, at the conclusion of the fight. And even during the fight, the pace was unreal by these two ladies. I mean, the chins on them, I think, is what really needs to be appreciated by the average fight fan, is because they were hitting each other with some bombs. Regardless if it was, punches, kicks, an elbow in the clinch. I mean, they were landing shots on each other, both women, and for them to go the full 5 rounds, and keep that pace. There was an unbelievable amount of punches thrown and landed successfully, and this was just an insane fight that resulted in Zhang Weili keeping her strawweight championship. It went the full distance, and it was a winner by split decision.
Yep.
So, what do you think is next for Zhang Weili defending her strawweight championship?
Yeah, I was looking at the division, and I think Joanna is obviously the best competitor, the best competition that Zhang Weili has, but Tatiana Suarez, undefeated, coming up.
A lot of people need to start paying attention to Tatiana Suarez.
Yeah.
I mean, she's, like you said, undefeated, 9-0 as a professional fighter. She just beat the number 5 ranked fighter in the division, and Nina Arsenov.
Yep.
And she's no easy fight either, and she beat her, walked through her.
Yeah, she's top 5, and I think people need to start looking at Tatiana and at least giving her one more match before maybe a championship. So maybe a top 3, top 4 bout. Maybe her and Rose, or maybe her and Jessica Andrade. But I think Joanna and Zhang Weili obviously separated themselves a little bit from the pack, and they need some time to recover. And
I think both of those fighters for sure will take at least 4 months before they start.
They need it.
Before they come back into a training camp.
It was brutal.
So, in my eyes, I think that for the next title shot against Zhang Weili, it comes down to either Jessica Andrade, who's the former champ, or Rose Namajunas, who is also the former champ.
Yeah, it's pretty much those
and
two.
So, the interesting thing was, before Joanna got this title shot, was that the UFC approached Rose Namajunas and offered her the fight initially, and she declined it. So, do you think now that Zhang won, do you think maybe they're going to try and rebook her for a title shot again right away? Or do you see her taking on someone else in the division before?
Joanna? Or
Rose? Rose.
Yeah, if they were trying to book that before the Joanna fight, then yeah, I don't see why not try to schedule that fight. But if Rose doesn't want to take it, then
it's because she said that is because of her mental state, that she wasn't in the right place. Like Rose has battled some mental issues, I'm assuming, or if she hasn't, I apologize for saying that, but she has taken some time away from the UFC before for personal reasons. That's what they call it. And she came out and said that she wasn't in the right state of mind to fight again for a title, because she didn't even know if she wanted to keep fighting. So
so I don't know. It's going to be a toss-up for the next fight for Zhang Wei. I think Joanna has a great matchup. We'll see how Tatiana does. I think she, like I said, needs a tune-up fight.
Another fight. So do you see it against Andrade? Do you think maybe she fights Andrade?
I think Andrade would be a great fight. That's a top competitor, ex-champion, who would get her some experience against a top level fighter like Zhang Weili is. So she needs that experience, and I think people need to watch out for Tatiana. So
yeah, she's definitely an up-and-comer in that division, but just focusing on the current champ, Zhang Weili, and her previous counterpart in Joanna, like, that fight was truly amazing. Like,
Oh yeah.
definitely the greatest women's title shot fight in the history of MMA. I mean, these women went to war out there, and I think there's really a testament to how high class they are as fighters. Like, they took each other to the distance. They're throwing a variety of things, different ways. Game plans obviously got thrown out the window. Like, they were just throwing in the middle of the octagon. No takedowns,
It was a brawl.
no submissions. Like, literally, they were just standing in the middle of the octagon for a full 5 rounds, just throwing punches galore. Like, it was insane. It was really spectacular to watch, and I'm just glad to have been able to witness it, honestly. Like, it was a great fight.
Yeah, me too. And it was, like I said, one of probably the best fight I've ever seen. And then the other one was probably one of the worst fights I've ever seen.
Going into the main event of UFC 248, and we had Adesanya against Romero. I mean, we hyped this fight up so much, and it turned out to not even be close. Like, we literally, in the first minute of action, we had 2 fighters just standing there. Not a single punch or anything was thrown. No exchanges, not even a clinch. We had Yoel Romero completely standing still in the middle of the octagon, which is just bizarre for him, knowing that that could very well be his last title shot.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, it was rough to see. I was expecting, like you said, we hyped it up too much. I was expecting a lot from that fight. I was expecting kind of like a brawl like the girls, but a little more takedowns, I guess, in this fight. And it just had nothing. It just a lot of standing around, a lot of blocks. I don't know, Yoel tried to turn it on a little bit at the end of the first.
But it was too late.
Yeah, and then at the end rounds, and it was just too late. And like you said, that could be his last title shot. And that's the way he approaches the fight, and it's just sad to see. It kind of
It's
sucks.
very unfortunate,
Yeah.
but Dom, we are out of time. I want to thank you so much for coming on again for this week's episode. You know, just always a great time discussing some sports with you, man. So I appreciate you coming on there.
Of course,
with us.
thank you, man. Thanks
And
for
thank
having
you,
me.
everyone out there, to listening. This is the Matt Gets Sports Talk Show.